up this weekend in the main event of UFC 278, a rematch 6 years, 8 months, and 1 day in the making. We have the Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru Usman, taking on Leon Rocky Edwards. And since their first pairing, UFC Fight Night, RDA versus Cowboy number 2 for the belt, Kamaru Usman's gone 13-0, and Leon Edwards has gone 9-0 with 1 no contest, and it's been absolute greatness out of both of these two guys, man. I mean, for Kamaru, he gets a win over Tyron Woodley. He's off to the races. I mean, a couple of wins over Colby Covington, a couple of wins that he has on his record over Jorge Masvidal. One of them unnecessary, one of them on short notice. And for Leon Edwards, it's been a slow progression of the wins. And I mean, some of my favorites on the highlight reel, the win over Gunnar Nelson, the win that he has over RDA, where he out-wrestled Rafael dos Anjos. It really did happen. And for Edwards, obviously the no contest 2 fights ago against Bilal Muhammad, where he was looking good until he stuck his hand out there with his fingers. He looked very, very good in his last fight against Nate Diaz if it was a 4-round fight. And in the 5th round, Nate Diaz can throw on his highlight reel before he fights Khamzat Chimaev, because you know the UFC will do that to try and build a name off Leon Edwards. Anything to build off Leon Edwards. But Leon looked really, really good in the first 4 rounds of that fight. Now, 5-round atmosphere, Usman, Edwards. What happened the first time these two guys fought? Well, Kamaru Usman went, hey, I wrestled in college, and I'm going to wrestle in this matchup. And that's pretty well what he was able to do in that matchup. I mean, Edwards is trying to pump the jab out there. I guess I should go this way because he's a southpaw. But if you look at that one, 2 29-28s for Usman, 130-27. He goes 6 of 13 in takedown attempts, 10 minutes and 50 seconds of control time. Leon Edwards tried to do, like in the first round, some triangles off his back, but he wasn't able to do it. Edwards, though, Team Renegade Jiu-Jitsu, you know Tom Breeze out of that gym, you know brother Fabian Edwards out of that gym. There are a lot of good grapplers over there in England, but when you do boil this one down, Matt, these two guys, I mean, out of the two of them, one of them fights like he did at that point, and one of them has kind of strayed away from that as he's become the champion.
Exactly. Usman still has the skill set that he had in that fight, but he's added different parts to it. Whereas Leon Edwards has just reinforced the fighter that he once was and gotten a lot better at those original skills. Like, he still is a good offensive wrestler. He still is extremely well-rounded. And that's really what I should say about Leon Edwards. That was always the thing that sort of set him apart from every other fighter in the division. A lot of fighters lean very heavily to either a grappler or a striker. And of course, Leon Edwards favors the striking, but like, he's a pretty good grappler at this stage of his career. He's very good offensively. And the Vicente Luque fight was the first one that really stood out in my mind as to like, wow, he's striking with a guy who was very dangerous on the feet. But when that wasn't going for him, he was able to duck underneath, get the takedown, get a lot of top control in that matchup. And that was the first fight that really opened my eyes to Leon Edwards potentially being, you know, a future guy in this division. And luckily for him, he has been. And that's the other thing that you have to talk about when you talk about Leon Edwards. His skill set did not change whatsoever between 3 rounds and 5 rounds. Yes, he tired a little bit against Nate Diaz, but that's because he was absolutely putting it on him for about 23.5 minutes in that fight. And then he throws a lazy check hook with his right hand. Nate Diaz is able to go down the middle with a straight shot and basically landed the perfect punch at the time. And to Edwards' credit, it's not like he went down from it. Like, he was hurt on his feet. Let's not get it twisted whatsoever. But Leon Edwards was able to withstand that storm. It's weird, and you might disagree with me on this, but I'd like to get your take. I think you can learn a little bit about Leon Edwards and how he's going to match up against Kamaru Usman based on that no contest to Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad's a guy who will threaten you a lot with his wrestling, will strike more with his volume than with power on the feet, but still, getting ready for a guy like Bilal Muhammad, I would imagine the training camp's very similar than getting ready for a guy like Kamaru Usman. And for the short amount of that fight that we saw, Leon Edwards is beating the brakes off Bilal Muhammad, and Bilal's looked really, really good as of late, and he may have even sort of taken that step up before the Leon Edwards fight. We just don't really know because Edwards looks so good on the opposing side from him. So, do you think you can look into that fight, or maybe I'm just looking a little bit too much into the 6 minutes we saw between them?
Bilal was inviting the striking, and that was the weird thing out of it. Bilal wasn't just going, hey, I gotta go take down City like he was able to do against Wonder Boy or against Luque. So if you do watch it for that, it was like, okay, well, Leon Edwards is out striking Bilal Muhammad. What much is there to gain out of it? For Kamaru Usman, again, wrestle, fights Tyron Woodley. That was just an odd fight. I mean, Woodley had kind of lost the snap to everything. And if you look at it for Usman as a champion, and if you look at it in the last 5 fights, Colby Covington almost 2.5 years ago, or just over 2.5 years ago, finishes him, beats Masvidal by decision, beats Gilbert Burns by finish in a fight where he got rocked early, rallied back, finishes him and looked really good, beats Jorge Masvidal by knockout, beats Covington his last time out. That fight was about 9 months ago for Usman. And in this, we've seen a progression in some of the boxing, going from Killcliff FC, before that, Black Zillions, and now to Onyx Labs with Trevor Whitman. I'm eager to see what we get out of a full-time game plan for Usman, not just out of Black Zillions at the time when he fought Leon Edwards, to now Onyx with Whitman, getting ready for a guy like Edwards who is so well-rounded.
I think this is a weird fight, though, where if Usman has success early with his striking, it's the worst thing that could ever happen to him. I really do, because he has improved his power on the feet, and he does throw some good straight shots down the middle when he is fully committed, but there's also a lot of moments in his fights where he's just sort of wildly swinging punches, hoping that one of the power shots land. And if he does do that against Leon Edwards, who does slip punches quite well, is very sound defensively, and can land good counters on the inside, like we saw against Gunnar Nelson. He had a real short elbow in that matchup. It was a real nice strike that hurt Nelson quite a bit. I know it's a split decision, one of the most one-sided split decisions I've ever seen in my life, because Leon Edwards beat the brakes off him. But you can see areas where Edwards can have a lot of success, and I feel like that's why he's not a crazy big underdog. I know he's a plus 280, which sounds like a lot, but at this stage of Kamaru Usman's career, he's going to be a big favorite over the majority of the opponents he's in there with. He has wins not only over very popular fighters, but skilled fighters too. Like the fact that he beat Colby Covington twice in basically 10 rounds of fighting is a very impressive task, and that's the other thing about Leon Edwards. Yes, he deserves this title shot. I'm not trying to take it away from him whatsoever. But in the division, it feels like there's a 1A Kamaru Usman, and in large part there is a 1B Colby Covington, and it would be nice to see a lot of these top-tier contenders fight Covington, and if they could beat him, it's a pretty good precursor to fighting a guy like Kamaru Usman. Now, I understand a lot of guys probably wouldn't be able to make it to the title shot, but still, it would have been nice to see Leon Edwards maybe fight a full fight against a pressure wrestler like we were going to get out of that Bilal Muhammad fight. I just feel like we were robbed of some really important minutes and some really important rounds in that matchup because of the no contest, but Leon Edwards, this will be the last thing I'll say, is big for the weight class, and I think he is going to be one of the few fighters who isn't going to look all that much smaller than Kamaru Usman. Like, Masvidal did fight at lightweight at one point. That's something we do have to talk about. Gilbert Burns, you know what he did? Fought at lightweight at one point. And Colby Covington has openly said that if there was a 165-pound division, if welterweight went up to 175, he would compete at 165. So Usman has had that physicality advantage over his last few opponents, and I don't necessarily think he's going to have that in Edwards. So maybe Edwards could hang with him a little bit with the wrestling defense.
I mean, for Usman against Covington, definitely had 10 rounds against him. Usman didn't beat Covington in all 10 of those 10 rounds. So,
just beat him twice throughout the 10 rounds they were together.
When you look at it for Leon Edwards, definitely bigger. You can go back and watch their stare down from their original fight.
His legs are huge.
You can go and watch it, the one that they had here recently at the press conference. But Usman is the favorite here. Open to minus 300, minus 350 right now. For Edwards, open plus 250, plus 270 or thereabouts. We have a look at the Topology votes, Matt. Surprised that's there to you. Kamaru Usman's pretty big favorite, and there's actually something that we do instead of Topology votes in the main events. We have a look at the YouTube community tab. So we threw it out there not that long ago, so the votes, not that many of them, but we said main event UFC 278 rematch at welterweight. Who's getting the win? 548 total votes, 73% Usman. Bill is saying in the comments, Usman won the first match. I think he's going to take the second too. Both fighters made improvements, but I think Usman's made the bigger improvements. Paul, minus 340 for one of the GOATs in his prime, is Pop and Popcorn. We've got Carnage. I favor Usman, but beating... People are sleeping on Edwards. When the fight is closer than they expect, they'll be surprised when they shouldn't. Chu is saying Edwards doesn't really stand a chance. I disagree. Just Another is saying Leon Scott's going to beat Usman. There's a lot of spelling going on right here, Matt. There is a lot going on. And y'all gotta stop sleeping on Usman as one of the other ones. I don't know who the hell is sleeping on Kamaru Usman. Topology votes, 81% Usman on 913 total votes.
This is the last thing I'll say about Kamaru Usman because he is reaching this stage of his career.
He's 35.
One of these nights! One of these nights, Father Time is going to catch up to Kamaru Usman. And he is a very athletic MMA fighter. And what normally fades first? Your skill set, which basically lasts you until the end of time because that's knowledge you've acquired, or your athleticism, which does fade as you get older. Your athleticism. So at a certain point, I do think Usman is going to start to slow down. So let's say we do get, and I don't think this is going to happen, the pick is Kamaru Usman, but still, I think that there is a possibility that maybe we only get like an 85% of Usman. Maybe he isn't as explosive with some of those takedown attempts. He can't complete all of them. It's just sort of forcing both guys to work more on the feet. I think that does favor Edwards more and more, being the more youthful guy and having good cardio himself. But I do still like Kamaru Usman in this matchup with his wrestling. I think his wrestling might be good enough to make this fight sort of stale, if I'm being honest, just because if he does have trouble on the feet, he's going to go back to that well over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, for people out there, I just said this here recently. Like, if you're going to watch tape, go back and watch 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, but just, like, to watch it. Like, you can't really gauge and put a ton of stock on fights that were that long ago. Now, their first matchup was 2015, so you can go back and watch it and gain a little bit here or there, but realize Leon Edwards has improved. Kamaru Usman's changed up his striking. If you go back and watch that fight, it's not fun to watch. It's a lot of Kamaru Usman closing the gap, getting it against the fence, going for the takedown, landing strikes from top position. Edwards gets back up, tries to kind of finagle some triangle attempts. Usman gets out of the triangle, lands some more ground and pound. They get back up. Then the next round starts, and it's more of the same. It's not really the best fight to go back and watch, but you can gain from Edwards, where we've seen him out wrestle RDA, the smaller guy. We saw him hang in the grappling against a great grappler in Gunnar Nelson, a guy who, look at what he did against Takashi Sato here recently in the comeback. So for Edwards, he did look very good in those positions, and of course the striking is a strong suit, whereas Kamaru has gained in his boxing. A little bit wild with some of the striking, but in terms of the power, you know that it's there. He's been earning finishes as a champion, which is better than a champion just trying to fight to hold his belt. So I do expect Kamaru Usman to get the win this weekend, but I think Leon Edwards is a decent underdog, like a moderate underdog. He's got a pretty good shot because he's really pieced all of his game together, and if somebody's going to beat Usman, Leon Edwards is the somebody out of the field.
The only issue I do have with Edwards having like a very super clear path to victory is if he was like 10% more heavy-handed, then maybe some of the shots he lands are able to hurt Usman a little bit more. That is the problem with Edwards. The technique's very crisp. He seems to have knockdown power, but we've yet to see very dominant knockout power from him. So maybe we will see that because Usman does leave some of those openings. I think this will be a fun fight, although I do admit that Usman's wrestling might make it slightly stale.
Yeah, I mean, I think Edwards has a giant shot as the underdog here, but both of us going with your champion for the and still 2 hours before the prelims this weekend, we have question mark kicks. You can join that. We offer up the final pick prediction for the week with the, we get the opportunity to look at the week as it is, see the weigh-ins on Friday. We also have the sidekick, which is live during the main card, so we get a chance to talk about the picks. We get a chance to hit it up in the chat with you. You can join in the action over there. We watch the fights. We score the fights. We have all sorts of fun during the fights. Matt, it's a channel all about the fights. What do you think about that?
It is. We talk about them quite a bit if you guys haven't figured it out yet. I think this should be a really fun card. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the breakdown because there are a lot of sort of hidden gems on this card that on initial review you don't really think are all that special, and then you start thinking to yourself, oh wait, I get to watch Jose Aldo fight this weekend, so I think this pay-per-view should be a fun one.
A lot of fun fights that are out there at Fight Night Picks on Twitter and Instagram. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.